Dear Patriots, before the news starts, please subscribe to our patriotic channel by clicking the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up to this video. Don't forget to leave your opinion below in the comments section. Share the news on Facebook and Twitter so you friends see it. Thank you.
Trump pokes fun and makes North Korea news, at Gridiron. President Donald Trump said late Saturday that we will be meeting with North Korea during a speech at the annual Gridiron Dinner in Washington, indicating that negotiations about a potential dialogue between the two countries continue to advance. "I won't rule out direct talks with Kim Jong Un, I just won't. As far as the risk of dealing with a madman is concerned, that's his problem, not mine," Trump told the more than 600 attendees during his 35-minute address at the Renaissance Washington Hotel on Saturday. "By the way, a couple days ago they said we would like to talk, and I said, so would we, but you have to de-nuke, you have to de-nuke. So let's see what happens, maybe positive things are happening, I hope that's true, we will be meeting and we'll see if anything positive happens." The White House did not immediately respond to a query as to whether the president was joking or not. The president has repeatedly indicated he's willing to negotiate with North Korea, though Vice President Mike Pence pulled out of a secret meeting with representatives of the regime at last month's Winter Olympics in South Korea. But for the rest of the speech, the president dove into his first appearance at a formal, insidery Washington event since his inauguration with gusto, making fun of himself. "I told them not to worry, nobody does self-deprecating better than I do," and a long list of others, including his wife Melania, his son-in-law Jared Kushner, his former top advisor Steve Bannon, senior Democrats, and even Louise Linton, wife of Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. On chaos in the White House, the president said, "So many people have been leaving the White House, it's been exciting and invigorating, I like chaos." "So, who's going to be the next to leave? Steve Miller, or Melania? That's terrible. But you love me, right, honey?" she said, "Behave. By the way, she has been an incredible first lady." He continued, "I want to apologize for running a little late, as Jared could not get through security." Trump said he calls Pence the apprentice, joking that the vice president wakes up every morning and asks, has he been impeached yet? Of his time as host of NBC's The Apprentice versus the White House, he said, "In one job I had to manage a cutthroat cast of characters, desperate for TV time, totally unprepared for their roles and their jobs, and each week afraid of having their asses fired. And the other job I was the host of a smash television hit." On rumors Oprah Winfrey might be weighing a run in 2020, he said Oprah says she'll run only if she gets the go-ahead from the Almighty. "All right, Oprah, go ahead and run." Addressing his ongoing feud with California Democrat Representative Adam Schiff, "Leakin' Adam, that guy leaks more than anyone. He's on the phone so much he doesn't have any time. Hey, let's call these guys at Jeff Zucker's network." On how to reduce global warming, "We're going to reduce the carbon footprint when we travel by shrinking the press pool so we only have room for Sean Hannity, Lou Dobbs, and Judge Jeanine." Before Trump spoke, journalists and club members crooned out satirized show tunes that lampooned the White House and the past year in politics, including a number on Michael Wolff's best-selling tell-all book Fire and Fury, Inside the Trump White House, which depicted a White House in chaos. Fox News host Bret Baier sang about Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller's Russia probe in You Can't Hurry Bob to the tune of the Supremes' You Can't Hurry Love. The President and First Lady were flanked at the top table by Gridiron Club and Foundation President David Lightman and Kevin McClatchy, chairman of the McClatchy Company. Joining the first couple were top officials in America's armed forces, a bevy of cabinet secretaries including Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross and Veterans Affairs Secretary David J. Shulkin, White House advisors Kushner and Ivanka Trump, and White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Senator Tom Cotton, Republican Arkansas, and New Orleans Mayor Mitch Landrieu, the evening's other featured speakers, were also at the head table along with their wives. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who was publicly criticized by the president this past week, was seated at the head table near Trump. Trump said he offered Sessions a ride to the confab, but he recused himself. Except Grover Cleveland, all presidents since 1885 have accepted the club's invitation to attend at least one of the annual dinners. Former President Barack Obama attended the Gridiron Club dinner in 2011, 2013 and 2015. President George W. Bush attended 6 of the 8 dinners during his 2 terms. Trump skipped both the Gridiron Club and the White House Correspondents Association annual gatherings last year. Earlier Saturday, the president had tweeted, "Mainstream media in US is being mocked all over the world. They've gone crazy." He later jabbed at the media once more in his address before making his exit, to return to the White House. "This might be the most fun I've had since watching your faces on election night." Trump threatens EU with tax on car imports, slams very stupid trade deals. President Donald Trump on Saturday threatened the European Union with increased taxes on automobile imports while slamming the very stupid trade deals and policies struck by his predecessors, as his administration continues to defend his decision this week to impose unilateral tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. "The United States has an $800 billion yearly trade deficit because of our very stupid trade deals and policies," the president wrote on Twitter. "Our jobs and wealth are being given to other countries that have taken advantage of us for years. They laugh at what fools our leaders have been. No more." He added, "If the EU wants to further increase their already massive tariffs and barriers on US companies doing business there, we will simply apply a tax on their cars which freely pour into the U.S., Trump added. "They make it impossible for our cars, and more, to sell there. Big trade imbalance." According to the Census Bureau's data, the U.S. total trade deficit in goods and services was just over $556 billion last year. But based solely on goods, the deficit was over $810 billion last year. On Thursday, Trump announced plans to levy a 25% tax on steel imports and 10% on aluminum imports to protect U.S. national security interests. His decision caused a drop in stock markets and was criticized by many Republican lawmakers. Many countries, including U.S. allies like Canada, said they opposed the proposal. In its response, the European Union said it would consider imposing retaliatory tariffs on politically sensitive products from Republican-run states, including motorcycles, clothing and alcohol. Despite his threat, Trump would not be able to impose tariffs on the EU cars without going through a formal process, like the administration did for steel and aluminum tariffs, otherwise Congress would need to act. Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross on Friday defended the proposed steel tariffs as no big deal to U.S. car buyers. "People talk about cars. There's about 1 ton of steel in a car, and the price of a ton of steel is $700 or so," Ross said on CNBC. "So 25% on that would be a 0.5% price increase on a typical $35,000 car," he said. "So it's no big deal." As president-elect, Trump threatened German car makers with a 35% tax for every car that comes to the USA. As a presidential candidate, Trump broke with decades of Republican orthodoxy on trade as he lambasted deals like the North American Free Trade Agreement and the Trans-Pacific Partnership as fundamentally unfair to the U.S. Doug Palmer contributed to this report. Officials try to contain damage from Trump trade war declaration. Officials inside the White House and the Treasury Department were trying on Friday to contain the fallout from President Donald Trump's declaration of a trade war and to ensure that new levies are not imposed on all trading partners. In an early morning Twitter post, the president cast off decades of consensus that trade wars damage the U.S. economy and hurt more workers than they help, embracing a strategy that many scholars believe helped deepen and extend the Great Depression. Trump tweeted that trade wars are good, and easy to win. The announcement spooked investors, enraged U.S. allies and left pro-trade White House officials scrambling to limit the damage and change the president's mind. "I think by the time this is actually finished, there's at least a chance it won't look like it did on Thursday," one senior administration official said Friday afternoon. But the stock market, which plunged following Trump's haphazard announcement of steel and aluminum tariffs on Thursday, continued its descent Friday. The Dow dropped over 300 points shortly after the opening bell on Wall Street, adding to a 420-point decline on Thursday. Stocks recovered somewhat later in the day as traders hope that by the time the tariffs become actual policy, they will be more targeted and spare major U.S. allies. Trump's trade war tweet came the morning after the president rebuked Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and National Economic Council Director Gary Cohn, siding with economic nationalists in his administration and announcing plans to impose steep 25% tariffs on imported steel and 10% on imported aluminum. The decision led Cohn, the former Goldman Sachs president viewed as the main check on Trump's protectionist impulses, to threaten to resign, according to two people familiar with the situation. And it had Treasury officials scrambling to reassure U.S. allies while monitoring the market fallout. One person close to Cohn said on Friday that the NEC director was at work in Washington and had a smile on his face. The White House was quiet. Several meetings had been canceled, according to administration officials, and some staffers opted to work from home because of the federal government's closure due to strong winds. There was a sense among many administration officials that the White House was getting crushed on the president's trade pronouncement, from the business community and Capitol Hill, and staying out of the office provided at least some respite. "If you are in the office after what has happened the past few weeks, you are a sucker," one White House official said. "I don't have any answers. We have no papers. We have nothing." Another senior member of the economic team said they were in the dark about the policy. "I don't understand what we announced, I don't know what the policy is," this person said. Only Peter Navarro, a White House trade advisor, and the Commerce Department appear to be in the loop on the president's decision. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, a billionaire, took to CNBC on Friday morning to defend the policy, holding up soup and beverage cans to argue that the increase in consumer prices from the tariffs wouldn't be so bad. Still, it felt to many inside the administration as if the president had stirred up a potential trade war and then suddenly exited Washington on Friday to attend the funeral of Billy Graham in North Carolina before heading to his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. The formal declaration of tariffs and Trump's robust embrace of trade wars spooked investors who fear that while a few steel companies may benefit, consumers will face higher prices, trading partners will retaliate, and manufacturers who rely on imported materials, including the auto industry, could suffer, perhaps severely. The idea that you can somehow win a trade battle by mutual impoverishment is just counter to economic consensus and decades of history, said Scott Lincecum, a trade attorney and adjunct scholar at the Cato Institute. Going back 100 years and even dating to the Civil War, you look at the academic analysis of protectionism and the results are pretty much uniformly the same. You have far more costs than benefits, and those costs are borne not just by consumers but by American companies and farmers and exporters. Immediate market reaction offered a snapshot into the potential fallout from increased protectionism. Shares in steel companies rose following Trump's announcements, but shares in companies that use imported steel and aluminum, from automakers like Ford and GM to aerospace giants like Boeing, fell sharply. American allies, including the European Union and Canada, immediately scorned Trump's decision on steel and threatened retribution. Republicans on Capitol Hill also sharply rebuked the president. Kooky 18th-century protectionism will jack up prices on American families, and will prompt retaliation from other countries, Senator Ben Sasse, Republican Nebraska, said in a statement on Friday. If the president goes through with this, it will kill American jobs. That's what every trade war ultimately does. So much losing. The chaotic process that led to Trump's tariff announcement also portrayed an increasingly isolated president, besieged by scandal and losing some of his most trusted aides, clinging to an issue he has pushed for years and that he believes helped him win the White House. But to advisors including Cohn and Mnuchin, as well as Republicans across Capitol Hill and in corporate America, Trump's decision to fully embrace protectionism threatens the two things actually going well in his presidency: a strengthening economy and rising stock market. His braggadocio about his effect on the stock market has been undercut by events of his own doing. David Kotok, chief investment officer at Cumberland Advisors, wrote in a client note on Friday morning. He is losing his staff. He is isolated and beleaguered. And in the midst of crisis he tosses an ill-thought-out bomb called protectionism that punches out the best of our allies and friends while it strengthens our nation's adversaries. Cohn, Mnuchin and other free trade advocates inside the White House argued for months that embracing tariffs and dripping up free trade deals would threaten a stock market rally that Trump until recently loved to boast about. The president has come to view the stock market as a form of bullying, according to two close White House advisors. For a while, the market argument worked, helping keep the president from unilaterally ending the North American Free Trade Agreement and a separate pact with South Korea. But at least as of Friday, it appeared the argument no longer swayed the president. Trump issued his latest trade war tweets even after the sharp market decline on Thursday. And White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders on Friday morning said the president was not worried about the market declines. The president's still focused on long-term economic fundamentals, she said. He is incredibly focused on the American worker. It's something that we have to have and something we need to have. Business coalitions outside the steel industry on Friday were gearing up to see whether they could carve out exemptions to blunt the impact of the proposed tariffs by excluding NAFTA or NATO countries, according to one Republican lobbyist, or create exemptions for products not currently manufactured in the U.S. Several Republican senators also made public statements in the past 24 hours blasting the president's plan. Factions on the Hill hoped that would be effective again in changing Trump's mind. When he threatened to pull out of NAFTA, several key lawmakers involved in trade reached out to the White House and directly to President to nudge him off the idea, and they had success. But some White House officials worried they might not be able to talk Trump out of the tariffs idea. The policy process inside the White House broke down during this decision, and Chief of Staff John Kelly, although he has kept his job over the past few weeks, has been weakened. Given the president's mood lately and how much he really believes in it, I think we are past that point, one official said. The process broke down on this one, and all of us feel like we've gone backwards.